Here at Birchal, we believe everyone should have the opportunity to invest in the brands they love.
With 36 successful offers closed and over $21 million raised, we are the largest equity crowdfunding platform in Australia, and we're on a mission to help startup founders gain access to capital.
So if you're looking for alternative funding for your business or looking for an early stage investment opportunity, then this is a podcast for you. I'm Claire Brown.
I'm Robin Holt, and in this show, we're sitting down with funded companies and industry experts to help you grow your business to the next level. Hey guys, and welcome to another Birchal podcast. You've got Robin Holt here, and I am joined here by Angus Woods from Advisor Ratings. So Advisor Ratings, if you don't already know, has now successfully funded twice on Birchal, having successfully completed a round raising 1.16 million last year in August, I think was when we initially closed. And then we've just completed a crowdsource funding rights issue round. We're going to talk about that in a lot more detail, but Angus, welcome to the podcast. I'm really thrilled to have you on here, having worked together so closely now a couple of times.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. It feels like we're become best buddies of late. You know a lot about our business these days, which is fairly complex when it comes to other virtual crowd-funded businesses, but we can talk about that more, I guess.
Yeah, I like that you've already started off on that path, because when we first spoke, I remember Advisor Ratings, it was this, advisory ratings, transparency platform for people who are out there providing financial advice and people who are then trying to get financial advice to go and find that. And it's still very much so that as a platform, but it's really a data business. And there's so much to Advisor Ratings that you don't know from the surface. And I think from everybody who was looking at it from an equity crowdfunding perspective, probably thought, what is Advisor Ratings? So maybe we'll start with that.
Yeah, no, that's a good kickoff question. So really, at the end of the day, it's a three-sided marketplace. I always use the analogy for people that don't quite understand what a three-sided marketplace is, or what we refer to. Uber has a three-sided marketplace. Uber, obviously, you've got the driver that then goes and picks up a consumer, but then Uber has the connections to all the suppliers as well. So we've created a similar. So our Uber or our car driver is their financial advisor. Yeah. And again, the financial advisor gets star rated, reviewed by clients, their own clients out there, and then they attract new consumers. So that's what we are. We provide the platform for consumers and advisors to connect, meet up, and hopefully form a relationship. And on the other side of the marketplace, it's about product manufacturers and service suppliers to the advice or investment industry trying to connect or get in front of financial planners or financial advisors with their product. So think of who's that, like superannuation funds, fund managers and the like. That sounds simple at its core. That's what we are. That's the technology. But beneath it, it's all the data that we supply to both the product manufacturers, especially in terms of making sure that they get in front of the right advisor. So really our monetary side of the business is really monetizing the data from that perspective. And especially without boring your client base here, there's so much regulatory change in this industry. It's an industry that, using the old cliche, that's ripe for disruption, ripe for a player such as this, where legacy product, legacy technology has really been embedded in banking and financial services and wealth for so long. They just don't know where to go to understand how to distribute their services. Regulations changing, so they need to be on top of that. So that's what we provide. We provide help in that area.
100%. And I mean, there's so much that's come out even since post-GFC environment that really the financial markets are not very easy for the average Joe to be able to understand or even come to. So somebody who's new to the game can go to Advisor Ratings, be able to really understand whether or not the person they're dealing with has good reviews and really understands what they're talking about and what they're delivering on. But when it comes to the business itself, you've been at it since 2014. And how did you just see the other marketplaces out there and the transparency that they were providing, and you felt really obliged to provide this in?
Yeah, well, it was the advice space was very opaque. and you're seeing I wanted to actually reach consumers, and consumers back then were very much relying on third-party review sites. So you see, it was when TripAdvisor was booming, other sort of third-party product sites were going well, and I thought, well, why not try that for individuals? Why not try that for professional services? And subsequently to that, you've seen a burgeoning of new sort of sites that now you can rate your doctor, you can rate your real estate agents. So sort of, I guess we were on the cusp of one of these being those first type of businesses to engage the consumer in a way that they're used to using the internet and used to making purchases. So, you know, nowadays it's all about rating and reviewing and getting third-party verification to make a decision. So we were, you know, I'd like to think we were in the right place at the right time, and financial advice was going through its own ructions. It was on the front page of every newspaper back at that point in time because of the GFC, and, you know, potential, you know, bad advice, or I should say incompetent advice, was making the front page of every financial newspaper. So we thought we'd lead with that as a way to get into the consumer space. So removing that opaqueness, really.
100%. And I think even before I go into why you equity crowdfunded, I'd love to understand some of the traction that you've got since you launched in 2014, because it's really impressive what you've managed to gain as in terms of a market share and a market presence for advisor ratings.
Yeah, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this, because I know most founders who are probably listening to this podcast, you know, are going through some hard times. And even when they had launched it was before the onset of COVID-19. You know, it hasn't been, whilst we've had some successes and we've done really, really well, it's been a typical startup environment, roller coaster. And I think business for anyone that's looking to crowdfund or, you know, raise capital, I know what it's like to be down to your last cent at every aspect that, you know, depending on where you are in your life cycle, and you pivot and change and you work through and those sorts of things. So whilst there are successes, there are also there's a lot of strain on people's I guess health, physical, mental health. But yeah, no, we notwithstanding that, you know, for every downward spike on the curve, there's been a lot of upward spikes. And so as long as we're going on a linear sort of projection that's north, which we have been doing,
it's always a good sign.
It's been exactly. So after I'm now waffling. So let's go straight to your question. Is like we've already gained, you know, we've already got 30-40% market share of the advisory space in terms of number of acclaimed advisor profiles.
That's awesome.
It was a unique proposition. You know, we've signed up clients, signed up some really big clients like Vanguard, sort of Magellan, the Australian Stock Exchange as our first clients. We only really turned on revenue after building out the technology for the first 3 years. So that was that was probably the hardest, but then it was also then convincing people to part with their dollars. You think building a business from the onset is hard, then asking people to pay for it is even harder.
Oh,
so
definitely.
You got to pitch your value prop. So the value prop since then, you know, I have to say we've slowly, and a marketplace is quite hard. It's a chicken and egg. You need one side to go onto the marketplace before you attract the other side. Which side do you attract first? It's that typical situation. And when you're cash strapped, you're relying on, you know, as much as you can to get out there from a media perspective, and relying on all your guile to fill out both sides of the marketplace with limited cash. But yeah, no, we've managed to at least do a decent job in the first 5 years, not without a few grey hairs, and I've lost a lot more hair, but I've managed to at least not get divorced and have a couple of sons in between there.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, having worked with you a couple of times, I can vouch for how hard you worked to make your raises happen and pull them off. Having done everything that we did through both equity crowdfunded raises, but I think even going back to the first, if you take advisor ratings on the face value of advisor ratings, it doesn't really strike you as the traditional equity crowdfunded business itself. just traditionally because of the fact that equity crowdfunding out for consumer brands, we're positioning ourselves in the likelihood that we want most of our users and any other customers of a business to really understand the business easily. And there's so much when you dive into advisor ratings. And you've raised capital through traditional methods before equity crowdfunding was even possible. So why did you go down this route?
Yeah, well, that's a multifaceted question. That's going to have a multifaceted answer, Robin. Really, because of the way we positioned our business as a transparent, independent, for the consumer type business, we didn't want to seem to be owned by anyone. So we automatically sort of constrained ourselves through other traditional funding means. Yes, we had some funders through some high net worth individuals that kicked off the business. There were a couple of smaller sort of funds, or I guess the VC funds, that did tip into the initial to the initial raises. But subsequent to that, when we were looking for more capital, we realised that we wanted to retain our independence. So that automatically cut out anyone that really touches financial advisors, because we didn't want to raise money from the AMPs, the Macquarie banks, those sorts of people that do have financial planning businesses, because there would be the perception of independence being somewhat conflicted for us. The other thing that which made us think about the crowd was the fact that we did have an engaged following in our advisor base. So all of a sudden we go, hang on, we've got a marketplace here. Why do we not reach out to the advisors themselves? So, and maybe you feel like I'm contradicting myself when I'm saying conflicted. I really was thinking about from, getting them involved from an individualistic sense, where they can't, they can't go and change your modus operandi. They can't go and change, based on one or two voting shares, what you do as a business, but they can become far more engaged in your product. So we realized that, hang on, we do have 25-30% of financial advisors out there that are engaged in the product. So that was our core focus, and sort of having an audience, and making, although it was a small audience, I know you talk about retail brands that have a sort of probably a million, quite a few million sort of presence, or that's what it's about.
There's not many of those in Australia.
No, well, we had, ours was a niche audience. Ours was like really, at the end of the day, it was only 5,000 people that we could really pitch to. But then it ended up becoming, it was also being able to simplify that message. So to bring in the outsiders as well, that sort of said, hang on, this is a unique proposition. It's a technology play. It's not your probably traditional crowdfunding sort of mechanism. But also I like to think that for Birchal's perspective, it opened up the fact that, hang on, RegTech or FinTech and those sorts of interesting platform plays can actually crowdfund as well, because I think people are becoming, from a crowd perspective, it's just becoming, there's more noise out there. So I would suggest for those that are sort of looking at traditional means, the crowd is an option, because the crowd's becoming more sophisticated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you highlight some key points there, because people who not wanting the business to seem like it was owned by anyone is such a key aspect of a transparent marketplace. Because if you've got hundreds of shareholders, nobody can point at you and say, well, hang on a minute, there's all this influence coming from this person, and how can I trust this platform? But actually it's owned by the very people who are using it and the operators. And therefore there's such a vast ownership here that really it's just going to hold everybody to be accountable to stick to the rules of the platform, and then provide the end transparency for the end user.
Well, and our investors who are advisors also help us on the product. So they help transform the product,
That's awesome.
What are the features? What am I getting out of it? What am I not getting out of it? So they actually become your research base, which is great. All of a sudden, how hard it is to get, should we put that blue or that green or that widget or that sort of stuff on your website? You're going through a massive amount of research just internally as a team, and some of the time as a startup, you have to guess all of a sudden you take the guesswork out because you're going straight to the users who are really engaged to say, you know what, I am going to fill out this survey and I am going to help co-create a good product with you.
Yeah, definitely. And look, we know all about product development here at Birchal. It's constantly ongoing as it is yours, being in the marketplace business as well. But I think it's just amazing, though, that you had what you consider a small client base of 5,000 to be able to go out to. And obviously you got some press and we really pushed the campaign far and wide. But that group of people who were really engaged with your platform showed how much they really want the platform to succeed, but also showed how interested they were in becoming an investor, because having raised 1.1 million from just over 200 people, and then going back very recently to do a crowdsourced funding rights issue round, which is effectively, it's at a discount to obviously reflect what's going on in the current markets. But you'd even grown over that period. So I would say it's a fantastic offer. And then even looking at what, happened with that community, they were saying, we love advisor ratings and we want to continue to use the platform. We're getting great feedback. We're getting new business from the platform. And therefore I want to be a co-owner in helping to drive this business forward, to then go on and continue to grow my own business, because effectively that's what it's going on and doing for the great advisors out there, because the good ones are going to survive as a result of getting all these peer reviews. So just assuming that everybody who's kind of listening understands really the basics of getting an equity crowdfunding campaign live and sending out emails to your network, doing some social posts, putting some advertising together, going out there and getting some PR. I'd be really interested to know some of the key aspects, and I know that I can probably cover off a couple of these, but what do you think that you perhaps did differently, or in addition to some of these aspects in an equity crowdfunding raise that made advisor ratings so successful? And it doesn't even have to be during the campaign itself. It could be before it.
Yeah. Well, comms is key. Communicating to your audience on a regular basis, so they feel like that they're engaged. So preceding that, if you're thinking about doing a raise, even if it's in the back of your head, start communicating now. Start communicating more to the investment community. So that's what I'd put out there more, and that could be done in several ways, either through PR and putting out press releases, but also just more subtly through like LinkedIn posts and all that sort of stuff. Start to build a following that way. So that's one element I'd say, from if you're even thinking about doing a raise. Before you do a raise, or even in the midst of a raise, I guess there's two things that I think we did quite well. Is obviously, because we're a testimonial review site anyway, I got our advisors and I got our clients, so the Magellans of the world, to actually give proper testimonials about how useful and how they're using our product in their business and those sorts of things. So it gives a sense of, again, third-party validation on your raise. So third-party validation goes not just in terms of what we're doing as a business, but it also played well in terms of being able to get enough capital away, or to raise enough capital. The other, I guess one of the other secret sources I'd say, and it's not just because we're a tech platform, but people like to see a bit of robustness around your business. And what I mean by that is, and we did it quite well with this recent round, this CSF round, is go behind and seeing what advisors go through in terms of the onboarding process. See the tech, see the process that's actually at play. And this will come whether you're a brewery, whether you're a pub looking to rate, whether you're in the food industry. It's all well and good to have the glossy sort of emotive sort of, but they also want to see process. They want to see that's built on robust sort of technology infrastructure, those sorts of things. So I think that really helped with us in terms of going, okay, these guys have got their stuff together, and it looks like the foundations are strong. And however that looks in terms of whatever business you're in. And obviously for us as a tech business, it was making sure that our tech was robust, our user interface, our user experience was strong, but being able to showcase that, not just put it on a PowerPoint deck. So we set up webinars, we set up those sorts of things, Q&A sessions that you could actually go and speak to us face to face in bulk. We'd invite people along to these like Zoom calls that we're having, and demonstrate our product live. So that helps last round. You've probably got a few more insights than I do, Robin, that you think we did well versus not. That was unique, but I think it was I think really communicating constantly. The other thing I'd say, and a little bit of a tidbit for those that are listening, is for those that are thinking about raising capital, exploit your successes during the raise.
Yeah.
And I've said this, in an open forum before, and give people little wins throughout the raise, and tell them what's going on. So you may think it's insignificant, but a new client, a new contract that may not be exceptionally valuable to your bottom line, but it does show validation. You may sort of think, oh, that's just another contract, but highlight that to your investors. They want to see those successes. And that's what we tried to make sure that we, pushed harder during the capital raise period to close contracts out, so we could highlight those contracts to incoming investors. So there's a few little ins and outs that you can do to basically whet the appetite of your investor base.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think from the first point that you mentioned there, what you were alluding to was really, tell the potential investors what they want to hear, provide them with exactly what you think that even some people wouldn't be able to be provided with in an equity crowdfunding raise. Take your FAQs of what people keep on asking you and put it in a webinar and invite everybody along so they can answer all of their questions that they have on that particular area itself. And I think that you did an exceptional job of doing that and really not breaking at any point or even leaving comms alone for more than a few days, because you guys were great at just following up with everybody and keeping everybody engaged in what was going on in the raise. Because if you've got somebody who's potentially interested in your business and then you get a new piece of good news and then you tell them about it, well, that's somebody who may have thought it was something interesting beforehand, and then they've got that good piece of news and they go, wow, okay, all right, I'm going to take another look at this again. Because
some people need a bit of a nudge, and you're gonna have to nudge them in various ways and on various channels, various mediums. And some people are seduced by the marketing-esque side of things. Some people are more seduced by those sort of more tangible sort of revenue type wins. So there's different ways to, I guess, to groom your investor base.
Yeah, 100%. I think it was even last year actually in that raise before, but when even reaching out to your expressions of interest via email and not getting responses, it's a case of, okay, well, they've probably got a LinkedIn profile, send them a quick message on there. And that's just a really easy way to try and caveat it, because at the end of the day, you don't know if you need to write that individual off as not interested until you've really got an answer from them. And look at what happened at the very end of your campaign. It absolutely soared. And this was the one last year. And even, the raise which we just closed, where you raised 200K, the last 24 hours are just really exciting to watch, but also it's entertaining.
You could imagine you guys, it's like being in a casino every 3 days with, with the closes that you guys have. I know investors are always, it's like an eBay auction. I guess people are sitting on the sidelines waiting for that last moment as to whether to invest. And, it's that FOMO effect. So how do you create the FOMO effect? And that's always the challenge, I think, with raises as well, because, you need to constantly keep the money tickling in. To engage, to shore up those undecided investors. So that's a comms challenge that every equity crowd. So you can't just sit back and wait and see what happens. And I think all my work's done once I've launched. It's ongoing comms. So always. And we trialed text messages for the first time, as you know. through the CSF rights issue. Now, I temper that with saying you need to really know your audience. So we knew because it was the second time round and it was a rights issue and we did have everyone's mobile number, it helped. But that was proved to be a real success for us. It was actually good learning for our business anyway. But that was the first time we trialed text messaging. So there's other means that you can start to trial beyond traditional avenues.
Yeah, definitely. No, we keep on talking about the CSF rights issue, and I will, I guess, in some way, just formally make it clear that Angus, who obviously found it, not now the CEO. I think Mark's now taken on the
CEO role. Yeah, I've relinquished that title. Yeah.
Yeah. However, the head of Advisor Ratings did raise a small capital round of 200K from CSF shareholders very recently. And just before that, you raised a little bit of capital from your non-CSF shareholders who'd come into the business beforehand.
Yep.
But the raise itself was really a case of you've got a lot of projects going on, but you've grown very significantly since your last capital raise. So it wasn't necessarily we're doing this growth round or we're doing this round because we haven't grown or we haven't formalized and actioned our plans. And I think compliance was a huge aspect of what you've managed to implement since the last round. And so I'm really interested to know what made you come back to the crowd for this little round here, which was your CSF rights issue, which rights issue really comes from the fact that after the GFC, Australians, public markets, they really looked at how they could offer good discounts to investors to try and keep the markets going. And so therefore a lot of shares were offered at a discount, and it was actually recognized to be a really fundamental aspect of keeping the markets very fluid.
Yeah. Well, I'm you've got to be aware of, despite the successes we were having, you've got to be aware of the nuances of the equity markets at that point in time. You're still playing in the capital raise market, where, albeit the private markets and the public markets are both connected and disconnected in some respect. So when we were going back to the market, we thought, and the reason why we went back to the market was really, the COVID-19 was just playing out. We wanted to make sure that we shored up our balance sheet just to ensure that we can continue to execute. There was always a plan at one point to go back to the market at a point in time. We thought going early was better, and we had a lot of successes under our belt since our last raise. That said, why did we do a discount? Because you could probably go, well, did you need a discount? Well, I think you just need to be aware of the investor's mindset at that point in time as well. We wanted to make sure that we shored up our balance sheet, but we wanted to make sure that we were also cognizant of people parting with their cash or being more nervous at this point in time. And fortunately or unfortunately, you just got to make sure that you're in tune with that and you're comfortable with discounting you're discounting your business accordingly. So when we did that, we looked at the equity markets. We realized that they were 20% off. So we took a rule of thumb to say, well, the public markets are 20% off. So let's take a 20% haircut to our last value price and offer it to our existing investors. And that was received really well. We had some good wins under our belt. I was surprised that the private markets were strong when we were raising. I think we were both surprised by that. I think there was a period in March and April where people were nervous and scared, and a lot of businesses couldn't get their capital raises away, or they had to take them off the table. I'd like to think that, yes, we went early. We probably didn't pick the right moment. I think now might be the right time. I think there's the public markets have somewhat slowed. People are back at business. People have got their business continuity plans in place. So I think you might find that raising capital in these markets, albeit I think you still have to discount, is the right time. And but you never know when the right time is at the end of the day. But that's Not sure if I answered your question, but that's what we wanted to go back to. We did want to go back to the crowd. They understood our business. So the people that were invested in us last time knew our story. So they understood our story. That's why we went back to existing investors. They knew our wins. They thought, hang on, here's a good deal. They've executed, not everything was done 100% correctly, but they've executed above and beyond what they said they would do. And now I'm getting the opportunity to reinvest at a discounted price. And am I willing to take that risk? And thankfully, the guys responded, or the investors did respond to that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think, even looking at some of the technicalities, having worked on so many of these raises now, I think I was just amazed by how clean it was and simple it was to really set up another raise once you've done one. So, a case of going back to the offer document and amending it, and then bringing on these new shareholders, which are very familiar with the platform and the process because they're already signed up, and then bringing them on as shareholders. Of course, they're offered as CSF shares, which don't count towards one of the 50, which then results in, having to convert to a public unlisted company. But if you're offering CSF shares, then effectively they don't even count as one towards one of those 50. So there's I think just simplicity, which
I agree. And sorry, cutting you off there, Robin, credit to you guys as well on that. I know this is a podcast that you probably want me to say some nice things about Birchal. So,
no.
So I know he's but in all seriousness, without being facetious in any way, two things. You're right. The hard work that we did in the first round in terms of getting an offer document signed off and done, and all those sorts of things. Setting up a registry, which we hadn't done before. All of that compliance work that you have to go through in that first round, which can be taxing. But then the second time, just dusting off an offer document, updating it with your successes or your challenges was really straightforward. And that's what I was saying about your platform, which was great, which I only found out halfway through the raise, because I ended up investing myself as part of the CSF rights issue. Was all the details were already captured there. So you'd already got my information. It was basically all my details were saved on the Birchal platform. So I wasn't re-entering anything. My bank account details were saved. So it was really straightforward. And we had that, you talk about a data business. You guys are just as data business as we are. But that made it really easy. And so feedback from some of our existing investors was how easy it was the second time round, because they were familiar with the Birchal platform. So awesome. I'd say kudos to you guys from that, because I probably haven't given you that feedback until this podcast. So
well, no, it's great to hear. And being a marketplace of full transparency, I'm sure it's always going to be that way. But either way, I think we've expressed how great it was to be able to raise for a platform like this, which doesn't even fit into the typical equity crowdfunding category itself. But really, I think that your execution of the campaign really shines out in what made this so successful. And going back to what you've done early on in the business has actually had a huge impact in making this successful, because people have been so engaged with the platform and what you're doing, and with having so many few other players out there really doing what you're doing, that's really got to kind of weigh in on why people were so interested in this. But I'm just interested to know, actually, even the rights issue round, it was really short. We opened it up for just under 10 days. What was your expectation?
I didn't, if you want an honest answer, Robin, I didn't really have that much of an expectation. I think COVID was just getting worse. The markets were more fearful every day. Whilst we managed to raise some capital, which helped, we managed to raise some capital from existing investors first. So the rights issue was underwritten before we launched it to the crowd. So that helped in terms of at least our confidence. So I was surprised, to be honest with you, because I already felt the confidence with the underwriting of the issue. But it just goes to show that how important communication is, even in a rights issue, and the fact that I'd say the whole adage around KISS, keep it simple, stupid, applies in every instance when you're raising capital. And even in the rights issue, people are, people often don't even, to a certain extent, understand what rights issue means. You're offering a discounted price and all those sorts of things. Why you're offering a discounted price? So it's explaining.
It's a down round.
It's explaining that. Well, it's not a down round, guys. It's not. So we didn't actually have any concern. That was one of my chief concerns, to be honest with you. People who had just put in for the round back in July are now being asked to dip into their pocket again at a 20% discount. And hang on, why am I doing that? It was, so the messaging has to be right, and the, contextualizing it in the market that you're in.
For sure.
So that said, it's all well and good now in hindsight, me saying that, that was always got, so we had great comms and we did all this. And at the onset, I was saying I didn't really have much expectation because the markets were deteriorating at a rapid rate when we kicked it off. So, but anyone considering a rights issue, I think it's getting your messaging right, and making sure that you're raising money for the right reasons.
Of course, and when you get your messaging right and you keep this crowd very engaged, what you've shown is that you can go back to them and you can offer them something new, and you don't really know what to expect, but raising 200K from the CSF shareholders was slightly more than you raised even from your previous non-CSF shareholders. And I think that, it just represents a real commitment from that group of individuals who did invest in your business in the first round, but also the fact that they could see that it was really something that they were, being offered as a result of the round, rather than a call out for, we need capital.
Yeah, no, exactly. It wasn't a cap in hand approach. It was, you're right. It's you're getting value from this round, and we've had some wins along the way. So it's messaging that right, and it's being honest and upfront with your shareholders as well. And I think setting a valuation. I know we've talked about this before, Robin, around making sure that whenever you're raising capital, really have a good look at your valuation and where you're setting it at each time. You don't want to be in the position of the perception of even down rounds at all. And I know in this market, rights issues being associated with down rounds and down rounds being associated with rights issues is always going to be the case, but the market is very forgiving when it's in an unstable environment like this. But that's important to always, and I'd say it for first-time crowdfunders and subsequent crowdfunders, to make sure that you spend a bit of time on your valuation and making sure that you're looking at what peers are doing in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice, because you've got to think about the long term. And that's what you've been doing for, since day one when you come to consider your valuation. But what I'm really interested in, actually, one aspect, because I know, having had a successful raise yourself, you'll get contacted a lot by people who are interested in doing equity crowdfunding. And so I'm interested in hearing what your advice is to anybody. I think this whole podcast has had a theme of advice, which you've been giving, but if there's anything else that you may want to add to that, to really just I guess, harness what makes a successful equity crowdfunding campaign.
I think emotion and personality counts. People want to know they're investing because a lot of it's startups. You want it, and I think the crowdfunders, and I think you guys do this well. You need to, a lot of the crowd funds need to be seen to be purpose driven. It needs to be. You need to have an emotional connection with the audience. It's not like public markets where you have to have a prospectus and you basically, you still obviously have to have your crowdfunding and offer document, and you have to, talk about the risks and do all the other compliance stuff. But there's a lot more liberty to connect on the emotional side with these audiences that you need to do, because you don't have, like in the public markets or an IPO, you may not have the financials to say, this is why we're raising this, and you're not accessing stockbrokers or those sorts of things who are going out on your behalf, pitching to high net worth. So it becomes a retail emotional connection. So that's what I'd say. They're buying you as much as the business itself. And, you know, I think you know that with every business that goes through a capital raise or a crowdfund, they're buying the people behind it, not just the product itself. So I think showing your personality is important, that emotional connection. And as I said, we're just repeating, getting the valuation right from the outset, so you can follow on, but also keeping it really, really simple. You know, and I'm not saying retail investors are unsophisticated, but saying, you know, retail investors want to understand and know what they're investing in.
Of course.
Whether it's you're not buying an annuity. You're buying it. You're part of something.
Yeah.
So personality needs to shine through, which you don't get really in a lot of IPOs. So that's why I'd say video content, comms, all of that sort of stuff really needs to come to
definitely. Unless it's negative, of course, for the IPO. You know, if you look at WeWork, perhaps.
Well, there you go.
There.
Yeah, the we. Sorry.
Yes.
There's personality and there's personality. Yeah.
Absolutely. You're so right, though, because you're the one who's speaking to the individuals who are investing into the business themselves. So they very much so buy into you in the same way that they're buying into the business and what you're doing. And so,
and you need to know everything about that business inside out. You need to know you need to know your financials, your marketing plan, your ops plan, all that sort of stuff. So, you know, these are the platforms that are going to be pitching to the crowd. So you need to know your business inside out.
Yeah. No,
I don't need to tell you that.
Fantastic advice, though. It really is. I think I'm really interested to hear, now that you've done this round, you've obviously had a larger round last year, which has kind of carried you through well. You've grown a lot, but what's in store for advisor ratings for the rest of the year and beyond?
We've got a bit going on at the moment. So you actually ask at a very interesting time where we're, for the first time, doing a massive consumer campaign. So I don't know when this will be going live to your audience, but it'll probably be already launched by the time they hear this. It's called the Together campaign. I know it sounds very cliched, but it is. We're all in this together. So the advisors now are going to be, for the next however many years, they're going to be like the frontline workers, you know, the first responders, as you could say, for the bushfires, or the frontline workers for, you know, the doctors and nurses in the healthcare crisis. We're now under, you know, the economic crisis that's now sort of playing out. Financial planners, financial advisors, people needing help with their money, superannuation funds, actually being at the forefront of helping consumers, banks, for example. So we're leading a campaign with the likes of a bunch of media outlets. So, you know, Channel 9, Fairfax, those sorts of things that we're going to be partnering with. For those that don't know, David Koch is an investor in our business. So, you know, Kochie will be involved. So we're launching that shortly. And really it's about helping everyday Australians get through the next sort of 12, 24 months. And we've had 500-600 advisors now sign up to the campaign to offer like pro bono advice or really discounted advice. So that's going to be interesting. It's also going to open up the advisor ratings brand a lot more, even though the campaign's called Together. It's going to open up the advisor ratings brand more so to the consumer. So that's one interesting thing. And then there's just a bunch of maintenance stuff that we'll continue to do for the next 6 months before we look at launching once the borders are open. I need to rethink my JV strategy here.
Yeah.
If the borders remain closed, about how do we get into overseas markets? But you know, we are looking at other industries, and we are looking at so anyone that advises you on your money, so mortgage brokers, solicitors, those sorts of people, areas that accountants are areas that we're looking at in the next sort of 24 months. But the US and the UK are also looking looking like quite exciting markets for us.
Yeah.
And I think they still will. I think it's even more so now with the economic crisis unfolding. It just might mean the strategy to launch in those jurisdictions might have changed a little bit. So
yeah,
I might not be
definitely.
able to jump a Qantas flight to get to the UK anymore. So I might have to do it via Zoom to launch a business. So
yeah, definitely. That's so exciting. And the consumer campaign is really exciting, actually. I had heard of it. Obviously, it's not completely new to me. But no, that's really exciting.
Well, I've been sort of subtle on media at the moment. So, but that's going to be hopefully quite a decent campaign. We've got a couple of decent backers behind it as well, a couple of good sponsors. I've never had marketing dollars, as probably a lot of your founders know. Marketing is very hard to find. So you scrimp on social media and then PR or whatever PR you can get. So this will be the first time we use traditional media channels, which is exciting.
No, very exciting. Well, look, it's been great to sit down with you and have this conversation and really go through what Advisor Ratings has done exceptionally well to be able to pull off the very successful equity crowdfunding campaigns that you've done last year and also this year. So I'd love to, before we even close off, just ask if there's anything else which you feel like would be of value to cover or really necessary to cover.
In short, don't be prepared when that would be my advice. Like be fully prepared. I know we've covered it before you go into an equity crowd fund. Do the hard work, and the results will show if you do the hard work. Like anything, I guess it's
of course.
Effort. Reward will come if the effort's put in. But obviously, I know there are a few crowdfunding platforms out there. So do your homework. We did ours. We chose you guys, obviously, and I'm not trying to do that. There's a reason for choosing different platforms, but there's a reason why you guys have probably now got 90% market share. And I would
not quite there yet.
Well, would 80, whatever it, whatever market share you have. So I'd like to think that back a winner and go with Birchal. Did you want me to say that, Robin? But no. In all seriousness, I'm not trying to tell your audience what to do. But definitely, you've helped out a lot. So leverage the resources of your crowdfunding partner, but make sure you do the hard work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that even just to close off on that point, we've spent so much time building out all the data that helps people to make the decisions and helps people to understand what they know about their crowd and what they don't know. So they can really understand whether or not they've got that interest within their own audience and what other aspects they need to do. And having done so many of these ourselves, we really know where we can help out. So
I totally agree. I think you guys were spot on in terms of the parabola, the inverse and parabola sort of funding curves about what's going to happen, and it played out to a T, even though I doubted you around my audience is going to be different from every other audience. At the end of the day, humans are humans, and the psychology of raising capital plays out in whatever. So the data that you have certainly helped our campaign. So
great. Well, look, that's been fantastic. And I think I'd encourage anybody who's really enjoyed listening about Advisor Ratings to go and follow you guys, sign up to your newsletter, go and actually hit the follow button on the Birchal profile for Advisor Ratings. But for anybody who really wants to have a conversation and apply it to their business for equity crowdfunding, do get in touch with me. My name is Robin Holt. You can email me on robin@birchal.com or just hit our website and go down the bottom to submit an eligibility form. And that way we'll be in touch, and then we can work together on your campaign. So Angus, thank you very much for your time here. It's been an absolute pleasure to sit down with you and just, talk all things Advisor Ratings and equity crowdfunding.
Thanks, Robin.
That's
You never
awesome.
know, we may be back for a third time. So.
Oh, I would love that. That would be great. Thanks very much,
Brilliant.
Angus.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Cheers, Robin. Bye.